I don't know whether I'm happy, but I look back on myself a dozen years or more and think I used to be so damn miserable. Misery is a funny thing. It's a companion. You miss it. When it's gone, it's one of the reasons why people can't shake off depression, they can't shake certain kinds of addiction. Yeah, at least you've got it. There's something there. You'll meet people who are always down on themselves and have a very negative self-image because they feel they can prove that they're lousy, fucked up people. Therefore, they've got an identity to hang on to. It's okay. I know who I am. I'm a mess. I've met people who have this sort of smug smile when they say this to you, and you think, okay, that's what you need to be. But the problem is you think this is something that is due to ungovernable external circumstances or psychological symptoms within yourself, and you're not recognizing the element of choice in all of this. The whole point of magic, the whole point of the process of doing a true will, or learning to know and do the true will, is recognizing that will is far more active all the time than we think it is. We are creating that which we are moment by moment by moment. Even when you think you're just idling, you're choosing to idle. Even when you're just not doing much at all, you are choosing that as an option. Again, that little thing on the plane. Something just kicked in and said we are going to choose not to be upset over the fact our plane is going to land late. It was a small thing, but it isn't.
That is, I can comment. Is that happiness though, or is that just acceptance of your?
It's an absent.
Misery?
Yeah, it's an absent. Well,
those
but
things
that's
aren't
where
necessarily synonymous, in my opinion.
when you get to the point of accepting the misery, what you're coming to is a stability.
Yeah, it depends.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Happiness is not something you can actually create. Happiness is something that you discover, I think. There are people you'll meet who are just so bouncy. I used to work with somebody who was always happy, and I couldn't figure, what drugs are you on?
Yeah, exactly.
But no, she was just somebody who was equilibrated that way in the whole normal system. But getting to accept the difficulty of navigating your way through human existence itself produces that sense of an underlying certainty, an underlying confidence that on the human level produces this thing we're calling happiness. The sense of it's okay. Because you can go through a lot of life feeling it's not okay.
Yeah.
Finding it's okay is a major step up.
And I would consider that I'm just, pontificating, but
Yeah.
I would consider that a different feeling than happiness. I mean, for me to be content with a situation and accept the situation doesn't mean I'm happy necessarily. It just means that I'm content and accept the situation. Whereas, like you said yourself, the only definition you could find of happiness was a release of endorphins in the brain.
Yeah.
Which is a more a heightened joy, let's say, than just acceptance of where I am and who I am. Like, for example, after an orgasm, it's a little different than just, well, my plan's late, so.
Yeah, but is that
that's
happiness?
cool.
Do you describe that as happiness?
No, but that is the release of an endorphin.
I think that's the problem. Happiness seems like kind of blanket.
That's the feeling of
It doesn't
happiness.
apply to, in the same way that all circumstances necessarily.
What I got with the idea of happiness was not being happy so much as the fact that I'd come through a process that had challenged and maybe not cancelled, but certainly beaten down and intimidated a lot of anxiety that I'd carried through my life. And I see other people, just using anxiety from my own example, other people would have different things manifesting. It's kind of peripheral, the happiness, the sense that I am now situated in a connected sense. If you're taking the Thelemic perspective, when you begin to realize Hadith, the individual perceiving consciousness in the middle, when that becomes valid, when that becomes active and alert and alive, you've already begun to include the totality of Nuit. Nu is my refuge. Nu is your refuge. When you realize you have that refuge, then something has shifted. No, it's not just I feel good about that, but on a deeper level, there is a consciousness shift. There is a potential to open to a much deeper level of illumination and consciousness.
I completely agree.
And
I'm just wary of over happiness.
I'm worried about happiness too. If I'd started this, if I'd written this darn thing or tried to write this thing before we posted the ad, I would have said, let's choose something different.
Yeah.
It was the challenge of trying to come up with how do you relate Thelema to happiness? Because there are, as I said before, there's ecstasy, there's vision.
I think, like, if you were to... Happiness is more of a contentment. The type of thing that Jay's talking about where it's like, oh, I just ate chocolate cake. Life's awesome. That's joy.
Yeah,
endorphins being released.
I was saying
Happiness is just like...
I was saying the opposite, that happiness is not synonymous with contentment, whereas most people would use the two synonymously. I think
there's a point when you like right now, it's like life isn't always great for me, but I'm rarely ever sad because I have an underlying happiness that I know things are the way they're supposed to be.
I think happiness
and I'm
tends
just
to...
happy. So that's happiness for me.
Everyone's got a different definition.
I think it does get tied to a lack
Yeah, I
of
guess
suffering
so.
or a lack of, like the opposite of suffering. So if I'm happy, it's because I'm not suffering over much, you know what I mean?
Whereas Edward's talking about accepting your suffering. and that
As
is
a
bad.
precursor state. I don't
Yeah.
mean that now I've accepted, self-acceptance is going to be a constant process. It will continue step by step by step. I don't think you're ever going to say, most of us probably won't accept our entirety at any given moment in life. Maybe the masters of the temple got to that point. The happiness thing is very individual, but I'm seeing here a kind of, for me, it was a relatedness to all things in a sense that everything is clicking in together. And the fact that rather than that being some kind of fantastic revelation, it was just something I took for granted. That everything is going somehow to mesh correctly. That was my own need because things will not mesh. They're going to miss completely, and there's going to be a terrible consequence. My mother was a person who was terribly anxious. I was programmed with this early on, so obviously I had to spend a lot of my time in my life trying to eliminate that as a dominant factor in my psyche. Things are going to go wrong. The first thing you have to accept is that you think things are going to go wrong. I had to learn to live with that assumption about life. There are people I know who have no particular fear that things are going to go wrong because they figure they can fix things or manage things or find help. That just happens to be a personal example. I don't think I'm trying to present that as a universal panacea. But part of the process of gradually expanding awareness of yourself in the world, the universe, the cosmos, whatever you want to call it, Nuit, does involve a greater confidence. And the deeper levels of gnosis that you get through Thelemic processes, through Hermetic rituals, through the meditation that we train in, these things will produce a constantly expanding sense of your own connection. The catch is that you get used to it and therefore assume it's normal. And it's only when you have a conversation with somebody who is far more contracted in their view that you realize this is this huge dislocation between you and other people. So the things that you might be worried about are things that they can't even imagine, and the things that they're worried about you think are not going to be a problem. That is a gift that I found going through the system. More than going by what I've read, I would have achieved simply by maturing through life and just modeling through on my own. It exacerbated the process of understanding and produced a wider acceptance of all kinds of weird stuff that would have terrified me. X number of years ago. So I feel almost smug that there are things that I can allow into my life that at one point I could not even have countenanced having any kind of interaction with. Just people, different types of situations. This is the psychological end of it. But this is also the threshold to mystical understanding. If you're dealing with, I don't know if you're familiar with the four worlds of the Kabbalah, there's an article on that in that copy of the solstice over there. This is a seer manifestation, very quickly. Psychological, the astral world, the world of formation, is known as Yetzirah, using the Hebrew term. And much, if not all, of regular magic is working within the world of Yetzirah. In order for that to happen, though, you're using the divine names of the world of origins, Atziluth, and especially in Kabbalistic ceremonies, you're working with archangelic energies, which are from the creative world of Bria. Creation is one step down from origins. That's a bit of a head spinner until you get your head around it. Going back up, if you are equilibrating your own world of Yetzirah, if you're finding that your own psyche, whatever the conditions might happen to be in your individual mind and being, has become more equilibrated, then you start getting more intimations from the mystical level of Bria. Things begin to open out. The knowledge and conversation of the Holy Guardian Angel occurs within the realm of Bria, even if it is drawing on much higher energy. Full KNC, I'm not going to speak on because I have not had full KNC. But if I haven't had full knowledge and conversation, I've had quite a bit of awareness and a number of interesting little chats along the way. So I think I have some idea of what it's about. Again, going right back to where I started, a gradual path was what was working for me, and trying to push it through in a heavier fashion, send the armored divisions through, wasn't working with my particular cast of mind. It does for some people. They just go at it. I know people who just sat down and said, I'm going to do this, and 6-7 years later, they've made amazing growth. Most of us aren't able to do that one. And we find that a slower path offers us a chance to make much greater growth along the way. The other thing I would say is that orders such as our new temple are training grounds for me. If you haven't done a lot of magic, or you've kind of figured it out from books but want some training in the finer points, it's a really cool thing to attend a group, to join a group that has a regular Kabbalistic ceremony, where you're seeing things done properly, where mistakes are being corrected, where people are being given a chance to get a handle on how this stuff is meant to be done properly. One reason the Temple of Thelema was started, in fact the primary reason, was that Phyllis Sackler saw Merrill, who'd had her own KNC in 1952, had spent decades trying to teach people the AA system, and a lot of them just flunking out. They had no preparation in them. They had no idea what they were going to be up against when they started a really intensive system. I don't just mean the intensive practices, but the actual sense of the AA living and working within them. It was way more than they expected. And for an untrained psyche to be exposed to that, you get some pretty bizarre flip-outs. Therefore, the idea of a school that would train you, that would put you through the student level of AA, but also give you a lot of well-rounded experience in ritual practice. What they weren't expecting was that smart idea, a Golden Dawn style order, took on a life of its own.